Kamaljeet Bakshi.
I move that the question be put now.
Point of order. Point of order. The Honourable Clayton Crowes
So I'm
this.
calling, Mr Chair.
The member called a point of order. Is this a point of order or not?
I'm calling for the call.
Ah, well, that's different. I haven't given the member the call yet. Mita Ririnui.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. Mr Chair, I'm sure there isn't a member in this House who would love to think that this is not only a good idea, but that it will actually work. And I'm not famous for my cynicism, and I know that yourself as a former Minister for the Courts, and myself as a former probation officer, former employee of the courts, knows the difficulties in collecting not only levies, should this go through, but also in the collection of fines. Now, being the cynic that I am this evening, I would like to just probably title this bill Wishful Thinking. The Wishful Thinking Bill, because basically I think that's what it is. I'm sure the Minister and the Chair is committed to the legislation and has some pretty strong theories about how it could possibly work. As I say, having worked for the Department of Corrections in the past and the courts, you know yourself, and as do many of the members in this House, is that as my colleague, the Honourable Leanne Dalziel, mentioned before, it's all very well if the offender doesn't go to prison. Because if the offender goes to prison, then what is going to be the case then? How does the court apply the levy? Given that this particular individual is going to be incarcerated, and unlikely that at any time in the near or distant or far distant future that there'll be any chance of a particular offender paying any levy whatsoever. And there is a huge list in the courts at the moment of individuals who have outstanding fines. I think that's quite a huge dilemma, as you know yourself, Mr Chair, having attempted to deal with that matter in the past, as have some of your colleagues. But isn't it interesting that while we might take advice from officials and design particular policies and implement them by way of legislation, in the real world, where the rubber meets the road, it's not that simple. As I said earlier on, as other colleagues have mentioned, that's all very well if the individual is in a position to make that contribution or to pay the levy, and then as historically that hasn't always been the case, and we have good examples in terms of unpaid funds. I know the member for Wanganui also has a bit of a track record in the police force, and as such would have had some involvement in court procedures and sentencing procedures as well, and would know that there are problems attached to it when you're attempting to extract money from offenders, whether they go to prison or not. So, Mr Chair, I think that whilst the Labour opposition is in favour of a genuine attempt to apply a levy, I've got to just say that from my experience, and I'm sure from the experience of many members in this House, in their previous roles in the community, that it's not quite that simple, not quite that straightforward. But I'd like to hear from the Minister and the Chair what the contingency plan is if this doesn't work. Are we going through this process under urgency just for the sake of it, or is there a grand plan somewhere that basically will be able to deal with the failures, I would say, of implementing such a procedure, this legislation, and to impose certain requirements on individuals? The Minister and the Chair really needs to basically explain that position to the House, because I'm sure that, well, as he's heard throughout the committee stage of this evening, that there is some support, considerable support for this approach. But at the same time, he's also heard members take calls and express concerns about whether or not this approach will be effective, even whether or not it will work. And as I say, and I think my colleague, the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove, has gotten to his feet a few times and said, well, you know, what's the go if the minister isn't able to make this work? And there's something appropriation, and I don't think the Minister of Finance would be too happy to hear that, but that is one option. Because, you know, you've got to ask yourself, who's the victim in this case?
Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Chairman, we could rename this bill, given the ACT Party